Hello and welcome back to Hyperplay. The naysayers said nay to Switch emulation on the Mangmi AIR X, but when the naysayers say nay, we just work doubly hard to make it a nice big yay. So please do like this video now if you appreciate our efforts, and we will get stuck in to Switch emulation on the humble Mangmi AIR X, $89 of glory with its Snapdragon 662 processor. Here are our settings. We are using the Eden Legacy Switch emulator app, version 0.0.4, release candidate 3. We are playing in handheld mode, 0.75 times resolution, which will look just dandy on this lovely 1080p screen. Do force maximum clocks as we have an Adreno 610 GPU. Use Mailbox for your VSync settings. That one's quite important, although we will change that for a game later, which we were struggling to run. But those are your default settings. Otherwise, you don't need to change anything. Leave Eden's Veil alone. Again, there's a hard to run game later that we will avail ourselves of Eden's Veil, but no need to lift Eden's Veil just yet. So those are our settings. Pretty standard as a rule, and they should work quite nicely on a number of lightweight Switch games, mostly indies, mostly RPGs, and we'll get the ball rolling with Arafel. Now, we tested Arafel in our Game Hub on the Mangmi AIR X showcase video. Do check that out after this vid if you're interested in Game Hub on the Mangmi AIR X. And Arafel performed pretty well on Game Hub, about 35 frames per second. There was an issue with the blonde chap's portrait at the start, the little thumbnail that pops up every time he speaks. He's called Adrian. We've got lines across his portrait. None of that here, however. Arafel performs better via Eden as a Switch game than the PC version does via Game Hub on the Mangmi AIR X. The only discrepancy we saw with Arafel is that line that goes across the title. That game, there we go, well done Hyperplay Man, pointing it out. But otherwise, whereas we were getting around 35 frames per second in Game Hub, perfectly respectable, here we're getting high 30s, often well over 40, including in the battles. So very good performance indeed for Arafel, a lovely turn-based indie RPG, highly recommended. It is done in the RPG Maker style, but they have made full use of the colour gamut, and it is fantastic. We particularly enjoyed the music as well, so we'll try and give you a little hint of that, hopefully without running into any copyright issues. And let's get in a little bit closer just so you can see the full glory. Sorry if the volume was a bit down on that. Obviously I hadn't pumped it up enough. But you can see that we are trying to convey to you the absolute glory of the colours of this 5.5-inch panel. It's a real beauty. And before judging a game, you always want to make sure you're into the gameplay proper, because title sequences and cutscenes and so on can often show very nicely for FPS, whereas the in-game footage can be quite different. But you will see that Arafel on Switch is running along lickety-split, absolutely. Maybe slightly slow. If we were a betting man, we'd say this may be a couple of percentage points slower than it would actually run on a real Switch, but on a turn-based indie RPG, you don't need to worry so much. The great benefit of playing Arafel and other games on Switch, if they run well on the Mangmi AIR X, is you don't get the long loading times that you would on Game Hub. That is the downside of Game Hub. The PC games do take a long time to load in. On the flip side of that, on the Switch, you'll often get slight delays and stutters while the game builds shaders, at least your first run through a scene. But once those shaders are built, like there we go, then it'll all be fine. So yeah, Arafel, really nice. We're going to cut along to a battle so I can show you that even in the battle sequences, the game runs at above a whopping 40 frames per second. And we just had to dim the lights here because that background is absolutely stunning. Anyone who's into 16-bit style visuals that graced games like Final Fantasy VI and Chrono Trigger will have a whale of a time with Arafel. It truly is stunning, and you see what I mean about the developers Stegosoft Studios employing the full gamut of colour and lovely lighting effects there too. We're in battle, over 40 frames per second. Not going to labour the point, Arafel, absolutely fantastic, running better on the Eden emulator, Eden Legacy, than on Game Hub. Game Hub proper, that is. We couldn't get Game Hub Lite to run any games, unfortunately, on the Mangmi AIR X. So if you do want to do PC versions of games, and there are a couple later where that might be preferable, choose Game Hub and the latest version thereof. But we're here for Switch emulation. This is Eden Legacy 0.0.4 release candidate 3, running RFL absolutely superbly. Not a problem on the Mangmi AIR X. Now for our next trick, we're going to show you another delightful indie JRPG style game that ran absolutely superb at 50 to 70 frames per second inside and outside of battle on Game Hub. So it'll be very interesting to see what Cosmic Star Heroine can do via Eden Legacy. And it loads up much quicker than on Game Hub, so that is a big plus. Looks absolutely stunning on this screen. No graphical discrepancies here either. Very much enjoying playing through this one. The colours truly pop on the Mangmi's 5.5 incher. And yeah, we are getting over 30 frames per second consistently in and out of battle. So not as good as we got on Game Hub, on Cosmic Star Heroine, on the Mangmi AIR X. Remember, that was 50 to 70 frames per second. But you do have to wait longer for the game to load and certain scenes to load. So up to you. Either way, an absolutely glorious option. A superb game that runs flawlessly on the Mangmi AIR X Switch version or PC. Quick squiz at the battle just to prove the point. Let's give the big boss a quick bash, and sooner or later he's going to get into that mech suit behind and really level up his powers. But never mind that. This is a game with serious style, Cosmic Star Heroine, and we actually say style because you have a style meter in this game that grants you extra buffs and benefits. All very cool. Zeboid Games were the developers here, also known for a Shakespearean lady JRPG called This Way Madness Lies, which again we featured on our Game Hub. We had the Steam game there actually from our Steam library playing very nicely. This Way Madness Lies, indie JRPG running through Game Hub Steam profile on the Mangmi AIR X. Haven't tested This Way Madness Lies, but given it's a lighter game than Cosmic Star Heroine, and given that Cosmic Star Heroine runs so well, then This Way Madness Lies will run superbly via Eden Emulator on the Mangmi AIR X as well. So here we go. Yep, very good. Very, very nice way to play the game. You want those higher frames per second? Then yeah, by all means, go for the Game Hub version of Cosmic Star Heroine. Otherwise, the Switch one on Eden Legacy Emulator will do very nicely. Let's just see the big guy pop into his mech suit. Very cool. A very cool game. And we will truck along to the next game in our Switch showcase on the Mangmi AIR X. And it's another title that we featured on our Game Hub video on the Mangmi AIR X. Now you may say, come on Hyperplay Man, show us different games so we can avail ourselves of different titles across different platforms. And you might be right. But I did want to show you how different titles compare, or rather the same titles compare on the different platforms on the Mangmi AIR X, so Game Hub versus Eden. So for Setsuna, I believe this is the first time that Eden takes the lead. Oh, apart from RFL, of course. Eden outperformed Game Hub on RFL, and it does it again. Only just on I Am Setsuna. Very pleased to see no graphical glitches. Previous Switch emulation of I Am Setsuna on Android, you would have those snowy trees, those snow-laden trees, all flashing and frightening, and not in a lightning kind of way, but rather in a much more terrifying, poor graphical fidelity way. But none of that here. Those little splashes down you see is just the heavy snow falling, and what a game to play during winter, I Am Setsuna. Anyway, enough of that. Let's have a look at our frames. So, big battle coming, and we are still going to be getting around 30 frames per second throughout, with fewer dips than on Game Hub. So Game Hub, out of battle, 30 frames per second for I Am Setsuna on the Mangmi AIR X, but here you're regularly getting well above 30 frames per second, and in battle on Game Hub it would dip, well, it would be anywhere between 17 and 29, not particularly stable, although we didn't get any crashes. Here, over 28 frames per second as a rule in battle. And this is important and keys into something that pops up later in the video. There is a button response mechanic, and sort of if you press the button, the Y button, as your attack animation is underway, you will get bonus damage against your enemy. Sorry, I didn't explain that very well, but there we go. If you press Y at exactly the time you're launching the attack you've already enabled with A, so you press A, start off the attack animation, then press Y at just the right time before your sword hits the enemy, you will get extra kill. Now, why is that important? Because of lag. We'll show you a game later which would otherwise be playable, but because you can't actually time your button presses correctly, it renders the battle system null and void. Here, I am Setsuna, press your Y button at exactly the right time, and yeah, the game will register that input and you will get your bonus kills, your extra items and extra damage and all that good stuff. So that is to say that I Am Setsuna is a flawless experience via the Eden Legacy emulator on the Mangmi AIR X. No need to worry about button lag and so on, unlike our next title. And we had high hopes for Bug Fables on the Mangmi AIR X playing via Eden Legacy, and we were quite happy to suffer frame rates down at about 18, 20, low 20 frames per second on occasion, provided it could run as smoothly as this, and it was running very smoothly and looked great. Those lovely primary colours with the big black outlines really showing up very nicely on this LCD panel. Definitely one of the better LCD panels we have come across for sure. Certainly under $100, my goodness. Right, let's get into a battle and we'll show you what I mean. And yeah, we're not particularly good at timing our button presses at the best of time, but the lag here made it absolutely impossible. And of course, as soon as I say that, I nail it in the green and do a perfect shot. But let's watch that again closely. And indeed slowly, because I've slowed the footage right down. You'll see I bring my thumb off as soon as I press the button. There. But actually, you'll see that the cursor carries on going, then bounces back and then lands just in the green. So had the game actually registered my input at the right time, I would have got it without needing to bounce back off the end of the bar and into the green. If you take my meaning, you can go back and have a look at that if you don't believe me. So unfortunately, I would deem Bug Fables very upsettingly to be unplayable on the Mangmi AIR X via Eden because of that lag. So any game which requires timed button presses, you want to be a little bit careful and make sure you test them. So for that reason, we didn't go and root out something like Super Mario RPG. And besides, you can play the original SNES version and various hacks thereof quite happily on the Mangmi AIR X. And that is why we went for the black version. So when we play 4x3, the black bars, if playing 4x3 content, will blend in very nicely. So yeah, I do recommend this black and orange accent, but just a shame that the lag renders Bug Fables unplayable on the Mangmi AIR X. Never mind, on to the next game. And oh boy, Rise of the Third Power. Now this is a tricky one, and yes, you guessed it, it's another turn-based indie RPG. Very nice indeed. It is what Stegosoft Studios did after Arafel, actually, and is very highly rated and does look great on this screen, but it was a little bit tricky to get going in Game Hub. There were some nasty graphical artifacts on one of the title screens, which you don't get here, but in-game it looked fine, but the frames were low. The frames were low on Game Hub. At best, you could get, well, high 20s out of battle, which was okay, and then 15 to 26 frames per second in battle. So actually, yeah, playable on Game Hub, we said just about. Different story, unfortunately. Not only does it seem to run particularly slowly on the Eden emulator on the Mangmi AIR X, we're really only getting 20 frames per second, not much more than that, just pootling around in a not very demanding area. And then once you get into battle, 11 to 20 frames per second. We would say Rise of the Third Power, not quite playable on the Eden emulator on the Mangmi AIR X, but just about playable on Game Hub. So if you want to play Rise of the Third Power, if you want to play Rise of the Third Power, then definitely play it via Game Hub instead. I'll just show you what I mean about the battle. You'll see that Rise of the Third Power struggles to get up to 20 frames per second in battle, and that is even after tweaking the settings. We had to change VSync to immediate. We had to go into Eden's Veil and fiddle with a bunch of parameters. don't bother. Just play it on GameHub instead if you're going to play Rise of the Third Power. And sorry about the darkness of the footage. It is an incredibly dark game, particularly in the opening. Obviously, you're infiltrating a castle on this moonlit night, and it's all supposed to be dark and moody, but does not lend itself well to gameplay showcases on YouTube. But the rest of the colourful footage, I'm sure, brought a smile to your face. And if you appreciate the efforts we went to, which were quite a lot, please do leave a like for this video and please do subscribe. Please also leave a comment if there are any other Switch games you'd like to see us test on the Mangmi AIR X, and those with enough thumbs ups and so on will feature in our next showcase on the Mangmi AIR X. And if you did want to pick up a Mangmi, and if we've convinced you to get one, then by all means please do use our link in the description below. We'll also include a link for a very nice TPU case for the Mangmi. It's a great device and one to cherish and take care of. It can play PC and Switch games. Well, some of them. Many thanks for watching, take care, and happy handheld gaming. Bye bye.